Hello there. It's like 1:30 p.m. Yeah. Um, Here in Kathmandu. I my visa finally got approved or granted, I guess they call it, yesterday morning after I had a little bit of a nervous breakdown about it. And actually, at that exact minute is when it got granted. So maybe I needed the nervous breakdown. I don't know. Anyway, um, so I'm flying back to Dehradun tomorrow morning. One thing that keeps coming up a lot from a lot of people is asking about kundalini. And when I write in my Facebook, in my blog, in my different places that I write, even when I wrote in my book, I don't really dumb down the words. So a lot of people get confused. A lot of people are confused about what kundalini is and means anyway. And then I use the word shakti a lot, and prana almost interchangeably, even though they are not quite exactly the same thing. They are all made of shakti. Shakti is the underlying component. So people are always asking about enlightenment and what it means when your kundalini rises. Does that mean you get enlightened? I'm not going to talk about enlightenment because I think everybody has a very lofty idea of what enlightenment means, and in almost no case is it exactly what these people think it is. So I might mention it later. Let's see. I kind of just do wing it. I don't plan what I'm going to say. It could come up, and let's see if it comes up. Shakti is the component that is the building block of everything in the universe. Shakti is the energy as it moves, not in stillness. Shiva is the stillness. You think of a hurricane is the wind and the water swirling around the eye of the hurricane. The eye that is quiet, calm, and peaceful is Shiva. And so without that eye of the storm, this would go crazy and destroy everything. So the eye of the storm is needed to be the center of your being so that the Shakti can stay here and you can have a little bit of control over it without too much effort. Shakti, once we inherit these bodies, we're born, our spirit is born into a body. There's a certain amount of Shakti that is put on reserve inside the body in what we would call the lower chakras. If you're thinking of the physical body, and I'll equate it with the physical body because that helps people, I think, a little bit more than talking about the energetic type stuff. If you're thinking about the physical body, between the space of the tailbone and the navel, tailbone and the perineum would be the Muladhara chakra. For females, the ovaries are the Swadhisthana chakra, the second one. And for males, the testicles are the Swadhisthana chakra. The navel and just above the navel is where the Manipura chakra is. So between the actual physical navel and the tailbone, somewhere in that area is where Kundalini coils up itself. And it's put on reserve for you to use when you need it, if you can figure out how to wake it up. Because it's a, how do I say it? It's not a thinking entity of itself. So it's not like it knows that it's forgotten, that it's there. But we as a being, as a whole, has forgotten that it's there. And the Atman that lives within us, the Atman is the spirit. And Guruji used to say there's a box sitting here. And bring your awareness to this box. And that is the real meaning of yoga. Connecting your awareness with the Atman. And when you do that, you're activating the upper chakras. And if you forget the lower chakras, that energy sits down there dormant, unused, and doesn't help you in life. And what do you do with this energy in life anyway? Well, it gives you more energy, so you don't get sleepy all the time. You have more control over the energy once it's awakened because you have more energy. But it needs to be done safely, because some people have kundalini experiences where, say, they're doing different things and they know nothing about this stuff, and it wakes up and it causes a problem with their mind because it has a blowout. It blows up and it doesn't have any consciousness added to it. This is the intuitive consciousness up here that you bring down to meet it. And as it wakes up, they meet somewhere between your solar plexus and your heart chakra, and that's where you get control of it, and then it moves up and out. There are many different interpretations of how this happens, so don't take my ideas here as written. This is my experience of it. I have read many shastra that discusses it, but it doesn't mean that this aligns with any one specific, and it could not align with the way you've been taught it. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Doesn't mean either of us are right. We can both be right in all situations, because that's the way it works in this Hindu cosmology. So when you're talking about, say, doing Ashtanga yoga, and we're using Mula Bandha, so we're lifting up the perineum, which is a physical activity, eventually that affects the body, the energetic body, and wakes up that energy, because the energy is not physical, it is energy. The physical body is still energy, but it's a denser form of it. We're trying to wake up that subtler form of energy that's stored inside of our body. So when you're using Mula Bandha while you're breathing, while you're moving, and doing all this stuff we do in Ashtanga Yoga, it slowly wakes up. You start to feel better. You start to have more energy throughout the day. You don't need that 2 p.m. nap. Or if you do, it's a 20-minute nap instead of a 2-hour nap. You start to have access to your gut feelings more, to a subtle awareness of energy in a room, energy in a person, just little things like that. This is somehow, Nagas also come into play with this. They can, if you worship Nagas, they help you work with the Kundalini a little bit more easily, so that it flows and stays flowing without as much effort as is needed. Because sometimes, say if Kundalini is a snake, it's often visualized as a snake coiled up in that space of the body I mentioned. You poke the snake. The snake does everything it can to ignore you. It doesn't want to bite you, because once the venom's out, it has to rebuild the venom, and it's not safe. So you can keep poking it and it can ignore you for a while, but once it wakes up, it can strike, and then you can have a problem. But if you've been doing asana practice, if you've been doing some pranayama, some stuff with your breath, that can start cultivating the body to accept this expanded energy. So when it wakes up, typically we're not trying to wake it up. You're not actively, but you're doing it by default, by doing all these other things. If you're not doing asana, a lot of times people who are into CrossFit, in these extreme forms of exercise, that can wake up stuff in the body, and it has an effect on the Kundalini. There are specific techniques that you can use with bandhas and stuff to wake it up, to lift it, and bang into it and force it. If you're not ready for it, it can cause a lot of trouble, though. So you do not want to force it. It's better to allow it to happen at the time it's ready, and when it starts to awaken, be with it, be present with it. There's a passage in one of my books that I always love to go back to, and it's talking about waking up the energy of Kali when you're a Kali worshiper. The best way to deal with it when that energy of Kali is waking up inside of you and around you, and she's coming into being, knowing who you are, that means she's going to turn her gaze toward you, and you're going to have this very massive effect. You have to get as still and as quiet as you can, rather than jump into the movement. Because when you can stay still and allow the shakti to move. While you're staying still, you'll have a safer journey. Because it's going to move, and it's going to be, when you walk into a room, people will feel you walk into the room once it's awakened. But you don't want to walk in and turn your angry gaze on someone and send bad energy at them, because then that incurs karma. You just have to have the energy and let it draw people to you and see the effects that come from that. They'll ask you to be your teacher. They'll ask all kinds of things. It's very interesting. But it's got so much to talk about that I don't know that I could even say it in 20 videos. So it's more of a personal conversation that's needed to be had with people, not a generalized one. Because in general, most people know general information. There are so many books out there, and a lot of those, I would say 90% of the books have correct information. But with each person, it happens differently. It affects you differently. It affects the people around you differently. It affects your life differently. People handle it differently. So the way you handle it is going to be, in one form, how it affects your life more, and you have to figure that out. I would say, number one, don't try to wake up your kundalini. Allow it to wake up when it's ready to wake up. Let it be there. Do your things. If you're doing yoga, keep doing it. If someone says to breathe stronger, breathe stronger. Someone says to lift your perineum to activate Mula Bandha physically, then do it. And let the effects come and see how it goes. If it comes in a big, big way, and you have an open heart and an open intuition to see when someone is there that can help you with it, be open enough to receive their help and allow them to tell you. A lot of times in Tantra especially, they'll give you a mantra, and the mantra will wake it up more, but it will wake it up in a quiet, softer way where it can move around more easily. Some mantras will wake it up with a big bang. If it's already awake and you're doing the mantras for helping to bring it to all corners of your being, into your aura, that's really one of the safest ways to do it. Just depends on who you learn from and what approach they take, because each little lineage has its own way to approach it. But to have it be awake, your life gets so much more full. You have experiences that you can't explain. Like, people come to you and talk to you, and it happens to be the right conversation at the right time and leads you to the next stage in your life, and then the next stage and the next stage, and it just starts working. Like, all of these synchronicities start to happen. And we would say coincidence if we're thinking with our logical mind. But when you're talking of kundalini and shakti and waking up your kundalini shakti, you do not want to use your logical mind. You want to open up to the magic that can be there, because the magic is really what it's about. Now, your logical mind is there to be used to not go overboard, because sometimes you can dive off into the deep end and it's not the right thing at that moment, and your logical brain will kind of caution you. So don't fight against it, let it be there, but feel in your body which one. Oh, does it feel more right to dive into the deep end, or does it feel right to kind of slowly walk down the stairs into the water? One person will have a better time diving in. One person will have a better time walking into the deep water. I used to be one of the ones who dove in. Now I'm kind of more interested in taking it slow and feeling the things as they happen. It's very interesting. It makes life more interesting to have all these little subtle things happen. And then to realize they're not so little and they're not so subtle once they start to show themselves to you. You feel like it's a big thing happening, and it is. So that's the beginning of that conversation. Very small, short, tiny beginning. And I think I'll leave it there for now, and we'll talk about it again soon. I think I'm going to write a companion piece on my Facebook, because I found a graphic that's really beautiful that I want to use to, and I want to see how I'm going to write it, because I'll write it differently than I speak it. So Have a good day. Probably the next time you hear from me, I will be back in Dehradun in India, and I'll make a video there. Okay? Have a good day. Bye.